Hey, everybody.
Hi, everyone.
Hi. July. We are up very near Canada. Canada's right behind us.
We can see it.
And right over there is the Salish Sea, and this is a bay related to the Salish Sea. And as you can see, there are sailboats behind us.
Yes.
And you can hear the birds, perhaps.
Yeah, as northwest as you can get in the U.S., continental U.S.
In Washington State.
Yeah.
Really beautiful. Really happy to be here. And very different weather than many of you are getting right now.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
many of us will be getting throughout the rest of the summer. This month,
Air. We're talking about air. You may recall that we're going to be going through the four elements. We've talked about earth. This is air. And then there's going to be a couple more. Some water and some fire. So stay tuned.
Yeah.
But air is, well, they're all sacred elements, but air is really especially notable. I mean, in Hindu religion, prana is air, breath. In the Chinese tradition, it's qi is really an air kind of energy that gives life to all beings. So, yeah, air is something special.
Yeah, and our original intent, we just found ourselves asking so many questions about how we come to really understand that we are not separate, and how that shifts from being an intellectual understanding, a cognitive understanding, to really being something that we live from all the time. And so we looked at the cosmos, and we looked at ecology as being conscious. And then we thought, what if we drew our attention right into this planet and its four essential elements: earth, air, fire, water. And so here we are on air. And the question remains the same. What about air can help any of us come from our first thought and have that first thought be connection rather than that kind of wary separation that we've all been socialized into? And so we're here with sailboats and birds and clouds and air.
And it's really wonderful to us to think that every time you inhale, you're inhaling molecules that have been cycling for thousands and thousands and thousands of years through the systems of the earth. So that's another opportunity for connection. And it's exciting too to think of being able to breathe at all, because this is the result of what was called the Great Oxygenation Event. Say that 3 times real fast. About 2.5 billion years ago, when microbial plants, mostly in the ocean, started using photosynthesis to produce oxygen, and that went on and on and on, and finally we get this atmosphere that's remained relatively stable for millions of years, with about 21% oxygen. And if that varied very much, too much oxygen, things would burst into flames. Not enough.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and not enough. We know what would happen.
Yeah. So what we know also from cosmology and physics, astrophysics, is that the hydrogen in our bodies is like 13.8 billion years old. And so as Gary describes the origin of oxygen, at least on this planet, and its age, all of that represents what is increasing complexity and diversity. Complexity, diversity, and specialization that has occurred since the universe came online. And to say come online is to suggest something that is way quicker than it was, because it's been very slow. So we represent part of the complexity and specialization. We are that. In any moment right now when you're watching this video, this is an expression of all of us having come this far and being able to interact with each other this way over technology, and with this language, as magnificent and also limited as it is. And all of this is happening because we're breathing in and out.
Yeah.
This fundamental thing. that without this air, without this breath, none of this would be possible. And there are other things that I really invite you to take a look at the July newsletter, because we are going to put some introductory kind of details in there about the magnificent balance in the atmosphere.
It's true.
That if it's off, even the nitrogen values, the percentage of nitrogen, if it were off just a little bit, we would have toxicity and it would be impossible, just the tiniest bit. And so there's a lot to be understood about air and our complete, we are air in some ways, because we sure wouldn't exist without it.
Yeah, and we live mostly in what's called the troposphere, which is where the weather happens, the clouds build, the breathable air, and then there are all these other layers as you go up, and they're all super important to this notion that expressed so beautifully in the Gaia idea of things staying in balance by virtue of what's happening with the plants versus what's happening and the exchanges that are happening between the plants and the atmosphere. Way up high, up in the mesosphere, when you see a shooting star, it's the gases in the mesosphere that create so much friction that meteorites going toward us, which would otherwise hit the Earth, are burned up by the friction in those gases. So this is really as if we could not have possibly imagined or designed a more perfect setting for all of this life, including us, to thrive. So that's worth celebrating.
Yeah. And so here we are out here in the air. And one of the questions, of course, that comes to me with my social science background is, what's the deal here? Why are we so hooked or habituated to or addicted to? And that's another question for us all to consider. This separation notion, this notion that I am separate from and therefore must be afraid of, or I must dominate, or I must own, and certainly I must control whatever is separate from me. Whereas air doesn't have any need to control anything. And yet, what Gary was just alluding to again, we talked about last month, and that is what we've learned from the Gaia principle, is that things really do adjust within the entire ecology of the planet to make it so that a slight variation in the wrong direction can be adjusted for.
Yeah.
And I guess, would you call it homeostasis? Some kind of balance can be returned.
Yeah, it's so important. If now, again, this isn't necessarily, it doesn't hold true for the speed at which we're changing the atmosphere by dumping carbon dioxide, but in millennia past, if carbon dioxide levels got too high, that tended to generate more plant life. The plant life took in the excess, stored it as carbon in the earth, and then eventually by producing oxygen, kind of helped reset so that the temperature would remain fairly constant, which it has fairly constant for a long, long time, which is, of course, very, very important to life, having adapted to a certain very narrow range of what's possible in temperatures.
So last month we were also talking about regenerative agriculture, and that ties in with what you were just saying. What happens with regenerative agriculture is that you've got a bunch of used to be bison and now cattle, shoulder to shoulder in a small area for a good while, and they are moved from pasture to pasture, so they're in small areas together. They stomp up and down, they poo and they peep, they poo and they pee, and poop and they pee, that's what I want to say. And the indigenous grasses come back with their exceptionally deeper roots. So they bring the carbon down deeper into the soil and then release the oxygen, right?
Yes.
Into the air.
Yeah, those exactly. Both things are going on.
Right.
Leading toward what Mary just said, a kind of homeostasis, a significant homeostasis.
And so if you think about the problem we've been having with too many cattle and too much methane because of the too many cattle, and you start doing this and maybe start whittling down the cattle production too a little bit. So when you have regenerative agriculture, very quickly, and we almost want to whisper it, things can repair. That's part of what I think you're referring to that has come forward in understanding the Gaia principle. That with that those indigenous grasses predominating, we could bring back things much quicker than many of the climate models I think are predicting.
Well, and not making a decision for the sake only of money, as that being the only factor in, let's say, chopping down big swaths of the Amazon rainforest and other forests, thereby reducing the oxygen that's being produced and the carbon that's being stored in the earth by not having as much vegetative material. So we know enough now to know what's a good choice, what's a sustainable choice, and what's not. And it's painful to see us make the wrong choice. I want to mention something we've, I think, said before, though. Right now we're in a very difficult set of circumstances with the environment, political stresses, and Bill McKibben is sometimes asked, "What can I do as an individual to make a difference? I can't have any effect." And his advice is almost always, "Well, stop acting like an individual. We have to come together." And when we do come together, we have political power, but we also have kind of the inspiration and the brain power that is created from more than just one of us trying to come up with a solution.
And then we also have the ineffabilities of community. And maybe they're not, the laughter. One of the things that we've seen at many of the gatherings, especially the large protests that have been happening here recently, is that there is levity. And that is medicinal. And it strengthens the resolve that all of us have to be saying, we are not separate. This planet depends on our interdependence. It is what we are as individuals, and it's what we are as a collective. And so this community and the air of community and what can we do? What we can do is be in community, talk with each other, connect with each other, and notice the things that are working.
Yeah.
That's something. There's so much that is quite seductive, actually, in how awful it is. And we can get pulled off into the awfulness, or we can, in addition to being aware of that sort of thing, we can turn our attention intentionally to what's working. And one of the things that's working right now is air and the atmosphere. And it connects with us with no need for us to say thank you, no need for us to do anything. However, back when we did the Clean Air and Water Acts in the 70s, those were efforts on the part of at least people in our country to tend to the air. And fortunately, other people in other parts of the globe were doing the same thing. So it's not like we don't know how to do this. We don't know how to be in community with air.
It's kind of interesting, again, if you look back across thousands of years of what the element air came to stand for in philosophical and even religious traditions, creativity and spirit are two things that show up across cultures. And that's sort of, I think, what Mary's been talking about. That creativity and spirit is a team sport, if you will.
Thank you.
And there's so much more joy in knowing here we are in this situation. We've got all of this help. Let's join hands, join forces, and come together to deal with it instead of one of us or one technology or one president or one party.
Policymaker.
That's not the way effective long-term change happens. As much as we may want it to be, it's not.
Yeah. Thank you. So here we are in the beginning of July. We will not have a deep dive. We're taking a little break like we often do in the summer. We'll be back for deep dive in October. And in the meantime, please keep up with us by being in touch through connect at fullecology.com. Also, check out our webpage,
www.fullecology.com. It's so easy to remember.
And if you're not getting the newsletter, please scroll down to the bottom of that homepage and you will see that we have a sign up, easy sign up for the monthly newsletter, so it's not a lot of mailings. Yeah, and the other thing that I'll say is that stay tuned, because here soon we'll be talking a little more about Gary's new book that's coming out. It's on the Ponderosa, called The
Yeah.
Twilight Forest.
Drops October 16th, and we're really looking forward to that. And keep dropping us notes about your thoughts on air and the elements, on getting together, coming together, on creativity and spirit, on ecology, biology, as it expresses itself in your life. That's again part of weaving this web of relationship that's so
right.
powerful.
And we so appreciate all of you.
Thanks
and we hope you have a wonderful July.
Yeah.
And with all the ways that this time is fraught. Blessings to everyone, all beings, in all places.
You take care of yourself, and be sure to allow a little space for joy and maybe even specifically beauty, because that will keep you able to keep going in a positive way no matter what is going on that's troublesome around us. You do really need to feed and nourish that spirit that you're going to be relying on, we're all going to be relying on to get through this.
Yes, and gratitude for air.
Yes.
Gratitude for air. Okay, that's what we have for this month.
Take care, everyone.
Bye for now.
Bye-bye.